Hi everyone, this is Dustin, the blind Minnesotan. Today I'm talking about Metro Mobility. Metro Mobility is a taxi service for seniors and for people with disabilities. And the Metro Mobility service is kind of broke up into like three areas, and each area is controlled by a different company that gets paid by Metro Mobility to drive people with disabilities and senior citizens around. And the three zones are the East Zone, that's by St. Paul, the St. Paul Metro. There is the West Zone, that's the Minneapolis Metro. And there's the South Zone, and that's the Bloomington Metro. Um, Bloomington is a big enough city that yes, it does have its own suburbs. Um, because Bloomington has the airport, the Mall of America, all the hotels, the VA, Clint Hospital. So Bloomington is a major city that everyone kind of forgets about because everyone just thinks, oh, it's part of Minneapolis. Ha 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 ha. No, Bloomington's a big enough city that has its own metro. Um, this service helps, seniors and disabled people get around these three metros. So, and each city has their own kind of rules with metro mobility. So, like for example, Maple Grove might say, hey, metro mobility can only go in our area these days. And Columbia Heights, where I live, might have a different example, like metro mobility can only enter this zone on these days. So with metro mobility, you have to, before you move someplace, you have to really figure out what days are you planning to be traveling and all that stuff. Um, if you want more of a visual of this, you want to go check out my YouTube channel, Dustin Limburg on YouTube, because this is more of the audio side, and my YouTube channel, Dustin Limburg, is more of the visual side. So on my YouTube video, I show you kind of the Metro Mobility maps, like this is where these buses go, Metro Mobility buses go, this is where these kind of buses go. It goes more visual. But on Spotify, you can't, on a podcast like this, you can't really go like deeply visual. Um, so how I see it is that with Metro Mobility, I call it the transportation of last resort because the first thing I try to do is I try to take the city bus. Um, and then if I want to go someplace where the city bus doesn't take me, that's where I take Metro Mobility. And then if Metro Mobility doesn't take me, that's when I'll take like, kind of an Uber. Um, So I kind of take like three different public transportation methods, and I use each one for a different kind of like purpose. Um, Let me give you some examples. Pretend if I want to go from Columbia Heights to the 5-8 Club in Champlin. Well, the 5-8 Club in Champlin does not have a city bus line. In Champlin at all doesn't have a city bus. So what I'll do is I will call 2 days ahead of time and say, hey y'all, um, my name is Dustin Limburg and I live at this address, and you tell them your address. And I said, I need to be at the 5-8 Club in Champlin at this time. And you normally want to call 2 days ahead of time. And then they say, okay, we're gonna put your pickup time and drop off time, that time you want to leave and time you want to be there in the computer, and we'll call you back the day before your appointment to confirm it or not. Because Metro Mobility, they need to make sure that there's drivers available before they promise you that they're going to commit. So what happens is the day before your appointment, they call you and say, hey, Dustin, we can't do that. And you we don't have time or drivers, or we can. And if they can't, that's when I just plan to like pull up my credit card and take the Uber. But if they can, the good thing is those the you want to be they can you want to be ready for them because they'll come up to your house or your apartment or your condo expecting you to be ready. With the hard part with Metro Mobility is they can be up to a half an hour late. Um, because of traffic, another client, or whatever happens. So they can say, so it'd be kind of like you need to be there at 8 o'clock, your appointment. You want to tell them that you want to be there at 7:30. Because you want to do that is if if they run half an hour late, and they're running half an hour late behind schedule, they can still get you to your place on time. Does that kind of make sense? Because when I used to take Metro Mobility from my rental townhouse in Maple Grove to Anoka Ramsey Community College in Coon Rapids, my class would literally be at 9 a.m. and I would literally tell them that I need to be there at 8:30. So then if they're half an hour late, I'm just making it to class on time. And sometimes, definitely because I'm going from Maple Grove to Coon Rapids, I'm going from the west side of the metro all the way to the east side of the metro. So I'm pretty much going from the Minneapolis metro to the St. Paul metro. I would used to say, hey, my class started at 9. I would say, hey, I want to be there at 8. So then if they're half an hour late and if they run into traffic and I'm an hour delay behind, I still make it in class on time. So Metro Mobility is not like the most like reliable public transportation system, but at least it's a way to get there. Like, okay, there's no other way for me to get from point A to point B with no city bus, but I'll take this. So when I was living in Maple Grove, I would first use the Maple Grove City Bus to go anywhere I need to go. So a lot of my doctors, my dentists, and stuff were in downtown Minneapolis because I could take the Maple Grove bus to downtown Minneapolis, and then I could walk from the bus in downtown Minneapolis to my doctor's office. Or when I lived in downtown Minneapolis, if I needed to go out to St. Louis Park, or if I needed to go to Bloomington, or if I needed to go to Southeast Minneapolis, I would take the city buses to those areas because I didn't want to rely on Metro Mobility because they might be late or they might not be on time, or I just kept on getting frustrated with Metro Mobility. And I'm like, okay. So then I turned Metro Mobility as a backup option. Like, okay, me and my friend want to go out to eat at the 5-8 Club in Champlin. I would take the Metro Mobility bus only to that place and only back because there's no city bus that would take me from Maple Grove or downtown Minneapolis to Champlin. So I would use Metro Mobility, as a hey, I don't have a car, but I still need to get there service because Ubers get expensive. So I'd rather prefer to use Metro Mobility over Uber. Uber's only the holy fuck I need to get there, and Metro Mobility denied me kind of option. Because I'm not when I have the opportunity to meet up with my friend or go to a doctor's appointment or go to a dentist appointment, I'm not letting Metro Mobility's inconsistencies hold me back. Um, so then but so then now and then some areas Metro Mobility runs 24 hours a day. In some areas they're limited. Like when I lived down Maple Grove, Metro Mobility only ran Monday through Friday from 6:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. So if like you were working and your shift went beyond 5 p.m., you were screwed. So when I was working at Nordstrom Rack, we had a disabled woman who lived in Brooklyn Park. She would start her shift around 8 a.m. and she'll end her shift at 4:30. So by the time she got to the thing, left the cash register, got to the break room, clocked out, and she could run get right to her Metro Mobility bus on time. So mm, so because she needed to get on that last 5 o'clock bus, or she would have been stuck in Maple Grove. So and then you have places like Brooklyn Park where if you take Metro Mobility, it runs 24 hours a day. So if you want to work a night shift making pretzels at your local bakery, you can have them, and you don't have a city bus option. You can have Metro Mobility drop you off at 10 p.m., for example, and then pick you up at 5 a.m. So then you can still work your everyday life shift or whatever shift you want, and then you're not stuck in, you know, one option. Um, so Metro Mobility, each city kind of has its own restrictions on Metro Mobility and that are in those zones. And if you want to learn about more about the zones, go to my YouTube channel, Dustin Lindberg, and I created a physical YouTube video where I have a camera on my screen and I physically show you the zones in person. Because this is kind of like part two to my Metro Mobility, like my YouTube video on Dustin Lindberg on my YouTube channel, Dustin Lindberg, is like almost like a part one. This is almost like a part two. Um, so Metro Mobility, I would take it, I would do my thing. Um, and then Minneapolis is another example where Metro Mobility runs, like 24 hours a day because Minneapolis, you have before COVID, they had some weird ass shifts for their employees. And so before you move, if you go to my video on my Dustin Lindbergh YouTube channel, you'll see the towns that are in the zone, Metro Mobility Zone that I showed you. Um, you mean it gives you more freedom to work those goofy shifts. Now I live in Columbia Heights, and Metro Mobility here in Columbia Heights runs 24 hours a day because the businesses here have like late hours, goofy hours, and the Columbia Heights literally told Metro Mobility that, hey, you can come and you can take people around our city 24 hours a day. And it helps that Columbia Heights has a lot of seniors in them because there's a lot of senior buildings, senior apartments, senior condos, and those seniors still want to have fun. What if you're a senior and can't drive anymore and you want to go to a bar to meet up with your friends? Metro Mobility can take you to that bar and you can be there from like 10 p.m. to like 3 a.m. hanging out with your friends and your senior having a good time playing poker and pool or whatever you guys are doing. And then, you can take Metro Mobility home. So each city has like a different in the zone has different rules with their Metro Mobility. Let me take a sip of water here. So so before you move your disabled person and you move into an area, you want to make sure that what kind of Metro Mobility rules are there. So pretend if like I'm going from Columbia Heights to Blaine. I have to make sure what rules Blaine has for Metro Mobility. Because if I tell Metro Mobility, hey, I want to be picked up at 11 p.m. to go home, Metro Mobility might say, Blaine's limit is 10 p.m. So we can't pick you up and we can't do that trip because you're staying past Blaine's limit. So, but so then you have to figure out, okay, the city I'm going, it's a Metro Mobility zone, but how late is Metro Mobility allowed to be there? And then if you need to go there, you have to make sure that you have them pick you up before that limit is done, or they're not gonna let you schedule your rides to go that day. Or they might let you let or they let or they might let their drivers drop you off and only drop you off. So before you get a job in the city, if you're going to 100% rely on Metro Mobility, you want to kind of know what those hours are before you apply for a job in that city. So then you know your work job is not it's not going to be you're not going to get fired because you can't get there or you can't get home with Metro Mobility. So I'm blessed. Be 10 if I want to go from Columbia Heights to Brooklyn Park or Brooklyn Center. Brooklyn Park and Brooklyn Center have a 24-hour rule. So be 10 if I want to say, okay, I want to go to a bar, I want to play bowling and go to a bar at Brooklyn Park or Brooklyn Center. And I tell the scheduler, hey, I want you to pick me up from Columbia Heights at 10 p.m. and then pick me up at 3 a.m. If there's drivers, they'll do that because Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center, and Columbia Heights all has a rule that Metro Mobility runs 24 hours. When I lived in Maple Grove, there was a guy who found a loophole in the Metro Mobility system route in Plymouth. He worked Monday through Friday because Metro Mobility does not work on the weekends in Plymouth. But what happened, he would work Monday through Friday, and sometimes when I was on my way to school, he would be on the bus because he lived in Brooklyn Park. And then so Metro Mobility would pick him up first and then drop him off on the way home. So on my way to school, because they'll drop him off on my way to school because it's a multiple person system. So so he would literally tell them to hey, drop him off at work because his shift started at 6. Hey, drop me off at work at 5. So then he'll just sit at work, in the lobby room on his phone, watching YouTube, whatever, start a shift at 6. And then Metro Mobility started at 6:30 in Plymouth. His shift would be done at 5. So he would just sit in his break room from 5 to 6:30, and then you'll have Metro Mobility pick him back up. Because Metro Mobility could do that. Yes, he's pretty much wasting 2 hours a day at work, an hour before his shift and an hour after, but he was able to find that loophole in Plymouth's Metro Mobility system. So so I'm gonna tell you, by the time they came and picked me up with him in the van and they dropped him off in Brooklyn Park on the way to Coon Rapids for me, that man used to be tired. But he worked full time. He had a disability. He was not living off Social Security based on what he told me. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just going off base the guy told me. And he was using that money to raise his kids and stuff because he was a disabled man with kids. He was using that money to raise his kids and he was doing his best. So so then like you can find like that example, you can find like loops around the system. Um, but just be careful because sometimes it depends on the person you get when like you schedule your rides over the phone or on the computer. Because sometimes those receptionists will be on to you and say, this person's trying to bend the rules. But sometimes if you schedule your rides online or through the phone, the people at the receptionist desk are normally so busy and they have so many calls they have to go through. They're not sometimes they don't really take the time to look through what you're doing. Um so then you just think about that. And then Metro Mobility, you can pay with Metro Mobility with your to-go cards. So so you want to go to Metro, and that's the easiest way to pay because you have to pay with the Metro Transit app, and that app sucks. Or you have to pay with Exact Change, or you can pay with the to-go card. And my the way I always paid was with the to go card when I took Metro Mobility, because you can go to my metrotransit.com and order a to go card and start a Metro Transit account. And then every time you need more funds, you just go to metrotransit.com and click on the to go card section, and you can fill up funds there. And that's what I did when I lived in Maple Grove. But when I moved to downtown Minneapolis, if you go to like the North Star, if you went go to the North Star train stations, or if you go to the Green Line or Blue Line train stations, you there's a little machine where you can buy money where it reminds me of an ATM, where you can insert your card into the machine and then put your to go card on a touchpad, and then it will inject the money through the machine onto your card. And then you can also do it that way. And a lot of young people, like college students who did not have access to secure internet when I lived in downtown Minneapolis and they took Metro Mobility or any other bus service, they would walk there, and that's how they would put money on their card because they didn't have access to internet home, or they're homeless and they don't have internet home, and they just had cash on them, and they'll use those they would insert the cash into the machine and get that as digital points, and then they'll put those digital points on their card, so then they can pay for the buses or whatever they need. So but when I was in downtown Minneapolis, I got this qualified for Metro Mobility because I lived in the LaSalle Plaza that was located between Nicollet Mall and Nicollet Avenue and Hennepin. So when I left my apartment at one way, I got public transportation, and I got with my other way, and I got public transportation. So then they said public transportation was too easy for me to get to, and I had too many city bus options. So because I could get to St. Louis Park in a half an hour, get to Edina in half an hour, I could get to Plymouth in half an hour, Maple Grove in half an hour, Brooklyn Center in half an hour, Brooklyn Park in an hour. Uh, they said I had so much public transportation that I no longer qualified for Metro Mobility. But when I lived in downtown Minneapolis, it didn't matter because I would use the city buses to get to the Mall of America to work and stuff. But now that I'm living in Columbia Heights, where there's not a lot of public transportation options, the only public transportation options I have is the 801 that goes from downtown Minneapolis to the Columbia Heights Transit Center, and then from the Columbia Heights Transit Center to the Brooklyn Park / Brooklyn Center Transit Centers, or to Rosedale Mall in Rosedale, Minnesota. So you mean, and then I have access to the 10. So you mean that goes from downtown Minneapolis through Columbia Heights, through Fridley, all the way to the Northtown Mall and Blaine. I like to call that downtown Blaine because it's where all the apartments are, the city hall is, and all that stuff. Um, and then so then I have the 10. So I can get out to Brooklyn Park during Monday through Friday. I can get out to Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center, and all the way to Rosedale / the Rosedale Mall. And then every day of the week, Monday through Monday, I can access the 10 between downtown Minneapolis and the Northtown Mall and Blaine. So I do have a lot of retail options. Like, oh cool, I can work at all the stores and restaurants along the bus. But if like you want more than those job opportunities, you need to drive Uber or take Metro Mobility. So now I'm reapplying for Metro Mobility again. And now this time when I'm reapplying, I am part of the East Zone because now I am part of the St. Paul Metro. So for a person who doesn't drive, person who takes the bus, it doesn't feel like I'm part of the St. Paul Metro because my bus goes to downtown Minneapolis. But according to the state of Minnesota, because I'm on the east side of the river, I'm part of the St. Paul Metro. So even I'm still part of the St. Paul Metro, I still go over to Minneapolis a lot because the city buses that are more reliable in my area go to Minneapolis. So I'm super excited to get Metro Mobility again because once I get Metro Mobility again, it'll give me access to more job opportunities here out in the suburbs. And I can go visit like my friend Paul out in Champlin. I can go do all these things that I lost the ability to do once I left downtown and I no longer have access to all the city buses anymore that I used to. And when I lost Metro Mobility when I moved into downtown Minneapolis. So so no matter what my choice was, I was going to be axed. But now that I'm going back on the suburbs, at least I have three choices if I get accepted by Metro Mobility. Living here in Columbia Heights is okay. Um, I'm renting a condo, so I don't because I'm getting less than $1,000 a month from Social Security, so I'm not making a lot of money. And then there's a lot of the low income housing, like Section D, Section 8. A lot of those apartments are kind of like scary. So what I did was I went online and I found a room for rent. Like a lady was renting out her condo. So I rent a condo. So when you show up to my building, it looks like, oh my God, Dustin owns a condo, blah 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 blah. But I live in a condo building, but I rent the condo unit that I'm in because I'm too broke to move right now to move into a private apartment like I did in downtown Minneapolis. But because in downtown Minneapolis, I could afford to live off my Social Security in a private apartment because I didn't live in the nice part of downtown Minneapolis. I kind of lived in the hood part of downtown Minneapolis. So then the rent was cheap enough that I could afford to live off my Social Security. But here in the suburbs, everything's kind of like so expensive because everything's newer and nicer than a lot of areas of downtown Minneapolis. So then it's harder to find a place that's affordable on your Social Security. So instead of ending up in Section D or Section 8 housing that's a little bit scary out in the suburbs, and there's no private apartment complex that I can afford off my Social Security by myself out in the suburbs, I decided to just like rent a bedroom in a condo in Columbia Heights. And I chose this because the Columbia Heights Transit Center is like a 2 blocks away, and Metro Mobility runs 24 hours a day here. So right now, the lady who owns this condo is looking for someone to fill up the second room, but I'm letting her do that because it's her unit. So yeah, but I'm actually really happy here in Columbia Heights. I'm actually more happy here in Columbia Heights than I was when I was in downtown Minneapolis. And then I'm just as happy here as I was when I was living in Maple Grove. Um, and then I went to check out Florida to see if I want to live with my parents down in Florida. But Florida, they live in an area called Fort Myers, and they have no city bus there in their neighborhood. Um, Everyone has to bike or take a car to get around. And the only way disabled people pretty much get around in Fort Myers, Florida, at least in the area my parents chose to buy their house, is pretty much by Uber or by a taxi company called Passport. And both are really expensive. And biking, when like you have to bike 3 miles to 4 miles just to get to a bus station where the bus comes only every 2 hours, it's like, nope, I'm staying poor and impoverished and staying up in Minnesota than moving down to Florida where my public transportation is limited. And I do have family I can move in with down here in Minnesota, but they also live in areas where there is no public transportation. I would have to Uber and bike everywhere. And the winter bikes sucks because it's snow and ice and you know, man. The only person I could moved in was my cousin who lives in South Minneapolis that has public transportation access, but she does not want any roommates. So I did out of my situation here. I did the best I could, and now I'm just reapplying for Metro Mobility, hoping I get on the service, and then then I can start applying for part-time jobs again slash full-time, whatever depends on whatever one I choose, because or whatever can find, because I just don't want to apply for a job that I don't like because it's on the major city bus route. I'm willing to Metro Mobility to a job every day and be stressed. Oh my God, is it coming today? And be knowing that I'm going to a job I like than taking a retail job I don't like because I know, okay, at least I can get to it. So, yeah. So once I hear back from Metro Mobility, if I'm accepted or not, it's going to change the way that my life is going, and what I choose to do next. Um, the reason I the reason why I moved from my paradise in Maple Grove to downtown Minneapolis was for a job opportunity at the downtown Minneapolis Nordstrom Rack. After that store closed and I had a 12-month lease, I was like, holy crap, what am I going to do? And I applied for the Mall of America because they're the first person that responded to me at the time. Because at the time, so many stores are closing downtown Minneapolis that they didn't want to. The stores that were open didn't want to hire anyone new because they're afraid of, okay, what if they hire someone new and then their store closes? So Mall of America was the first person that was the company that was confident that they're not going to close, that was willing to hire me. So then I was taking the Blue Line train from downtown Minneapolis to Bloomington. And I didn't mind working for the Mall of America, but doing customer service, like at the customer service desks. But when they had me starting to do like the foods in the theme park and try to get me to do the rides in the Nickelodeon theme park, that's when I kind of said nope. And I told them nope. But they kept on putting me over there and I wasn't happy. So when DCM Services, a debt collection agency, reached out to me and said, hey, we want to hire you, I said, heck yeah. I jumped on that thing, worked there for a month. I liked the schedule. It was a Monday through Friday job from 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. There was two shifts in there. I worked a 10 to 5, and some days I worked a 10 to 7 because I would stay later than most of the other people and listen to voicemails, make plans. Okay, this is who we're gonna call tomorrow, and this is what we're gonna say and stuff. Um, but they laid me off because I wasn't collecting money fast enough and stuff. So then I'm like, okay, I have 2 months left on this horrible lease that I have in downtown Minneapolis. So then I be lucky I had 2 free months when I moved down there. So I'm like, okay, I mean, I that haven't used yet. So I used my last 2 months, free months, to cover up my last 2 months of the lease. And then 1 month I went down to Florida to see my mom, to see if, okay, after my lease ends in downtown, do I want to move down to Florida or do I want to stay in Minnesota? I was literally in Florida for a month, Googling apartments, Googling bus routes, meeting up with John. He's a blind guy in Naples, Florida. And figured out Florida wasn't for me. And then came back to Minnesota, did apartment tours, and whatever, and found where I am now. And then I've been living here for a month. I turned in my keys to my old apartment this Sunday. And so this weekend, I've been cleaning slowly all month and working on this podcast and try to make my dreams of my YouTube and this podcast real. Um, Going on to Aaron's opinion, researching details for Aaron's opinion, because if I'm going on to another blind or visually impaired person's podcast, I want to make sure that I know what the hell I'm talking about. So I went on to that. I did 4 or 5 episodes with him to help him boost his listeners, because some of the things I talk about even here in my YouTube in the disabled community are considered controversial. And then suddenly, and then I started, once I got my internet set up here at my new place, my Excel energy transferred here and stuff, I went to State Services of the Blind St. Paul and say, hey, I'm ready to apply for jobs again. So I had a meeting with them yesterday, and they're starting to look over my resume, and I have another meeting on Friday with them, and we're going to start the job process. And I can get jobs myself. Like, got Mall America by myself, I got Cup Foods by myself, got Total Wine by myself. I got all my past jobs by myself. But this time I'm going through State Services for the Blind, because State Services for the Blind can get me a job in the blind and vision impaired community. And because I'm sick of going into private industry, like that are not blind and visually impaired community related, and getting discriminated against by all these companies, not treated right because of my disability. So I'm going through this time. I'm going through State Services for the Blind, and they're going to try to find me a job in the disabled community somewhere, some nonprofit, some organization who helps blind and other disabled people and visually impaired people and people with schizophrenia and other stuff. So, because if I'm going to work full time or if I'm going to work part time, depends on what kind of job they help me find, I want to make sure that's in the disabled community. So then, I'm not putting up with the same discrimination that I would get if I went back into the private field. If they can't find me anything in the disability industry, I will go back into private field, even if it's not the most best situation or what I want. But guys, to pay your bills, sometimes you have to do things that you don't want. So, and then and then I want some time. At least I want like 3 days or 2 days off with my new job, 2 days off a week, at least. So then one day I can shave, I can cut my hair and whatever, clean my apartment, at least my half of the apartment slash condo. And then the other day I can go and volunteer or see my sister and my brothers and all that stuff. So I at least want 2 days off a week so I can clean, shave, and all that stuff, and then see my siblings or volunteer if they're busy that day and all that stuff. So I'm just rebuilding my life together. And then because this is a podcast, I don't have to be like my YouTube videos. I'm more strict. Like this video, it's about this topic, and I'm not going off that topic. But here on my podcast, you guys, I'm a little bit more loose. So if you want to see serious dictator Dustin who stays on the topic, go check out Dustin Lindbergh on YouTube. Um, I'm the one that's on the boat and a link. I'm not the priest Dustin Lindbergh. I'm not the soccer player Dustin Lindbergh. I'm the one that's has this picture of me on a kayak on the boat. But if you type in Dustin Lindbergh, you'll see, oh, this guy's making videos about blindness and stuff and natural mobility and stuff, and you'll easily find which one's me. Um, the other two Dustin Lindberghs on YouTube, they make good content. I have watched some of their content, and I'm very impressed. But but when like you're a content creator like me, you put so much of your time trying to create content like this matcha mobility talk, telling people like, hey, the YouTube version of this metro mobility conversation is better. Go listen over there or watch it over there. You know what I mean? So, yeah, so I actually love podcasting more than the YouTube stuff because the YouTube stuff, you have to make sure your hair's combed, you're showered, you have to speak with confidence. People see your your body motions. You have to go fast because you have to make the YouTube video as short as possible. Here in the podcasting, I feel like, people expect to listen to your voice for an hour. So then I feel like, cool, I actually have the time to actually talk about the main topics, small topics like this, just because if I talked about metro mobility and how I feel about it for, hours straight, you'd be bored. But the good thing with a podcast is so long, I can insert third party weight conversations like this, and we can still get the point across. Yeah. So what I'm just trying to say is, you guys, based on my experience, go if you're blind, vision impaired, or other disabilities, or senior who lost their driver's license in the state of Minnesota. Go apply. Go to call Metro Mobility. Have them mail paperwork to your house. Go to your eye doctor. Have them fill out that paperwork, or another doctor if you're not blind or vision impaired, and have them fill out that paperwork. And then take that to get places. And if that does not work the days you need to go, take Uber as your backup. And if you have access to a city bus like me, use your city bus as the main source of travel, use Metro Mobility as a backup, and use Uber as the backup to the backup. Um, yeah, I took Metro Mobility when I was going to school at Anoka Ramsey for like 3 years straight because I went part time. So, and then when I transferred over to Hennepin Tech, I still used Metro Mobility to get to school. Um, my friend Paul, he is in his 60s and he used Metro Mobility for the last 30 years. He was there when Metro Mobility was created, and he says over time, as Metro Mobility is able to find more drivers, as the technology in the Metro Mobility vans get better, the service keeps getting better. So if you know anyone who can drive that's looking for a job, hey, tell them to drive for Metro Mobility and to drive for the city bus. So then they're getting paid $15 to $20 an hour, and they're also helping people in our community. So, um, yeah, most of the good stuff I talked about is in my YouTube video. But this is I kind of wanted to talk to you guys today because when you're single and you live by yourself and you have this 550 square path of the condo to this rental condo to yourself and you just want to talk. So here I am just talking. So yeah, so go check out Metro Mobility. Just check out your zones. See what time the zones run. And if you're going to move to an area for public transportation, just try to move to an area in Hennepin, Anoka, and Ramsey County. Because if you move to an area in Anoka, Hennepin, or Ramsey County, you should get some kind of Metro Mobility service if you qualify and by having doctor prove that, hey, I'm disabled. Well, guys, it's been a good night talking to you. I hope you guys share this episode, like this episode. Go check out the one I have on YouTube. The good one has pictures and images and stuff. And I hope you guys have a good day.